Hi textile buddies, I'm Daria, textile and surface pattern designer, educator and artist, both traditional and digital. On this channel we talk all things artwork, textile pattern and color. Patterns are everywhere. Today is going to be a video that I've been thinking about for a while. I think it's the most logical one to make for me at this point because I have recently gone through some life changes, and that is I'm no longer a full-time artist only. I have a part-time job now unrelated to art. Well, not completely, there are still things I can learn from it, but more on it later. Which is probably the most widespread scenario because many people who dabble in art usually have some kind of part-time or full-time job. Because I probably won't tell you anything new, the general concept is that it's impossible to make it as an artist. You should be a lawyer or a doctor instead, and so on. I also got the idea for this video from the fact that recently two people who haven't talked to me for a while reached out to me asking things about my art business, because I post a lot on my social media promoting my artwork, and it must appear like being a full-time artist is all butterflies and rainbow clouds. Many people aspire to get to this lifestyle somehow, as it looks like being an artist is just a joy. You draw and paint and get paid for it. But it's a little bit more complicated than that. So in case you were wondering how long does it take to make it as an artist, can you earn a living by being a surface pattern designer or a painter, I'll share my experience on it. If it's your first time on this channel, welcome, and just to share a little of my background, I learned painting and drawing as a teenager in my home country of Belarus. After that, I became a linguist, but later on, after moving to the United States, I realized I would like to get back to art seriously and went to college for textile design in the Boston area. After graduating, I interned at a medium-sized, eco-conscious women's fashion brand and then worked for 5 years in corporate surface pattern design for a local manufacturing giant at the headquarters located here where I live. So I was on a steady career path, as it might seem, but something went wrong. While that job taught me a lot, especially in terms of design skills that now I share in my Skillshare classes, I wasn't happy with the corporate culture, with my perspectives, and the job just didn't work for my personality. I'm very creative and I need a large extent of freedom that the job didn't give me. Creative freedom, better work-life balance, more flexible hours, and so on. So after a depressive episode lasting a couple of years and health issues that kicked in after a full-time 9-to-5 computer job, I decided to quit my full-time corporate design position and concentrate fully on my small art business Pattern Talent, which includes making repeating patterns for different markets, wallpaper, apparel, fabrics, stationery, and so on, creating YouTube videos, selling products in my own shop, and recently I also started teaching on Skillshare. There are a couple other, smaller things that I have tried. Not a couple, I've tried a lot of things. So when I was leaving the corporate job, I was of course super scared because you never know if you're going to make it. But I thought that if I devote my time entirely to my art business, eventually I will succeed in a couple years. I spent 2.5 years working on it full time, and it didn't happen. Take a second to subscribe to this channel where I always share authentic and candid content like this, and like this video if you would like to see more of similar clips or if you find the topic interesting. Of course, I am not saying that it's totally impossible to make it as a full-time artist. I'm not a big fan of sweeping statements. First of all, there are many options for artists and designers, from animation to fashion design, oil painting, logo design, working for hire, now generating AI images and whatnot. All I can share is my personal experience, and the purpose of this video is to share a realistic perspective, because in many videos, particularly where creators are selling their classes to you, they give you fake promises that after taking their classes you will succeed, your career will propel to the sky, and so on. I haven't actually heard real stories like this. Maybe I just didn't get to, but I have heard plenty of stories where expectations were not fulfilled. So if you have a nicely paying job, don't rush to quit it just yet for an art career. It might seem tempting to jump headfirst into a career where your everyday activities are so enjoyable. It's not all fun and games, it's a serious life choice. So what should you consider before jumping into a full-time art or design career, be it freelancing, licensing, selling on PODs or Etsy, and so on? First of all, let's discuss the elephant in the room: money. It might seem that it's enough to create some savings and then jumpstart your design journey. But unfortunately, it takes a while to establish a steady income stream or streams, and no one can tell you exactly how long it's going to take. It might be 3, 5, 10 years, or it might never happen at all. It's like this in pretty much any creative career, be it acting, film directing, music, modeling, photography, blogging, and so on. So having a reliable source of income, such as another part-time or full-time job, rent income if you have property that you can lend, or having a spouse, partner, or parent who supports you financially while you get established is crucial. My art endeavors would have never happened if it wasn't for my husband's support. And we are by no means wealthy. We came from Belarus with our 11-month-old daughter, one suitcase and a couple $1,000s in cash, and rent was $1,000 per month at the time. And settling down and succeeding as immigrants is a story for another video because it's quite a journey. So my husband and I both worked multiple jobs and went back to school. My husband studied IT and became a quality assurance engineer, QA, and I became a textile designer. I always joke that if one person in the family is an artist, the other one definitely needs to be in IT or finance or law. Like I said, we are middle class, and for me it was never like my husband would tell me, "Oh honey, just stay home and take care of our child and home and do whatever makes you happy." There were periods when my husband said, you actually have to get back to work. For example, after the maternity leave, because he couldn't handle it alone. He worked both a day job and a night job, and till this day, with his nice IT position at a global company, he still takes gigs like delivery gigs and handyman jobs in order to make extra cash, because yes, while his paycheck got bigger as he got into IT, so did the expenses. We took a mortgage to buy our first and only for now house. The taxes are very high. Our health insurance skyrocketed. Massachusetts is one of the most expensive states. So while my husband fully supports my career emotionally, we just can't afford to live on one paycheck for now. That's why I worked a full-time job after graduation, and that's why I got a part-time job now, this year, after trying to make it in design for 2.5 years independently. The second most important thing to understand plunging into an art career is there will be limitations. We are still talking about money. Everyone has different levels of what's enough. Someone can live on a small amount of money and someone can't. So you just have to be honest with yourself, what you can do without and what you cannot. When I was working full-time and had my highest pay ever, ironically, I spent a giant portion of it on clothes to wear to the office. Now that I've gone through the process of downshifting, I don't need to buy shoes for every outfit and matching handbag and so on. And it turned out I can live just fine with it. Of course, you don't have to buy shoes for every outfit. I'm just like that, I do like clothes and shoes and everything. On the other hand, our friends from Belarus recently came here to the States and they were very well off back home. So when they moved here, they immediately rented a very expensive apartment. They're paying almost $3,000 in rent monthly and working their asses off at low-income jobs, because that's how everybody starts here, most of the people, including us. My husband and I started as a receptionist and my husband started as a delivery driver. He used to be a lawyer back in Belarus. But so, those friends have very high living standards and are unwilling to compromise. To each their own, whatever makes you happy. You just have to understand there will be some sacrifices. Either you sacrifice, certain purchases, or you sacrifice your comfort, or, like you take a job that you maybe wouldn't have taken otherwise, some kind of part-time low-income job and so on. The third thing I want you to know about being a full-time artist, it's my general impression that the world doesn't care about your art. And people just don't care. Of course, there are groups of people who appreciate and understand art more, but on average, people would rather spend money on restaurants, travel, home decor, or just meet their basic needs like buying groceries. They might not even have money for art. People will compliment your art, like it on Instagram, say how much you inspire them, ask you questions about how do you become an artist for their own purposes and interest, more on it later, but they won't buy anything. The percentage of people who actually buy from you is very low. And I offer stuff at all price points. You can have an art print under $20. You can buy a tea towel or a fat quarter of fabric. You don't necessarily have to buy a silk scarf if you don't want to. That's why I sort of hate pushing my art to friends and acquaintances, because they don't need this stuff. I'd rather have genuinely interested customers who buy it because they really like it or need it, not out of pity, for the artist. At the same time, point number 4 is very important. Self-promotion is crucial. You have to yell about your art, figuratively, of course. Promote it non-stop, post it, share it, run ads if you want to. And there will still be people saying, oh, I had no idea you paint. True story. Because the algorithm weeds out your posts. People either don't see it at all or see only a fraction of what you've posted. And shameless self-promotion is the way to go. I don't care if it's annoying. I post on Instagram and Facebook every day most of the time. I post on LinkedIn as well, which is probably not the best platform for art promotion. It feels kind of weird to do it, but I don't care. The more I see it, the better. And yes, I do like my own posts, because first of all, I made this design, of course I like it. And secondly, a like is a like. It's all for the freaking algorithm. So there is posting for the customer, sharing value and important info, using quality photos and mock-ups, and there's posting for the freaking algorithm, which is posting daily, posting at a certain time of the day, using SEO optimized descriptions, using the right amount of the proper hashtags, and all this good stuff. The next thing, number 5, that I want you to know is that for an average artist, sales are rare and kind of a big deal. Of course, it differs from market to market. For example, I do usually get a couple sales almost daily on Spoonflower, but to sell a watercolor painting, whoa, it's such an event of the century, or selling something on my website. Of course, it's also related to how much effort you've put in this particular venue as well. Point number 6 is a little bit sad. More people don't make it than do. I have plenty of examples of people who burn out and give up. So I wanted to share the couple examples that I mentioned at the beginning of the video. It's 2 people reached out to me. The first one was someone I knew through children. Our kids were friends, and she was an architect. She was a very successful architect. She is an architect who actually designed some famous buildings in Moscow and some, around the world too. She was always kind of curious about my art. Architects do learn to draw and paint as well, so it's very connected. And I probably mentioned it before in my videos that lots of people come from the architecture world. Several years ago, there was an economic downfall and many architects lost their jobs, and many of them became watercolor painters, and they are going around and teaching classes now, and I've taken one of those. So long story short, she was always kind of supportive of my artwork. She was always kind of curious, but then after we moved to our current location, we kind of lost connection. We interacted on Facebook a little bit, but not too much. We weren't like super close. So at the beginning of this year, she reaches out to me like, hey, how are you doing? We moved to a town close to you. Would you like to catch up with a cup of coffee? I'm like, okay, why not? Cool. I have anxiety. I'm quite generally like an anxious person. And my anxiety is like, she wants something from you. Like, we haven't communicated in like 6 or 7 years. Like, why does she suddenly want to catch up, right? But then my other personality in my head is like, oh, stop it. She just wants to like catch up and talk. Maybe she's lonely, because when we moved here, it's more, suburban. It does get a little bit lonely. It's very different from the city that we used to live in. It's very close to Boston, called Somerville. Living in the suburbs is very different from living in the city. So when, I saw her, she's like, okay, come to my house. And I went, and my anxiety was right. She did want something from me, actually. So she's like, tell me about your art business. Like, how long have you been doing it full time? And some people are very subtle, and she wasn't one of them. She was like, how much do you make? How much? Like, less than that in a year. So it turned out she was looking into opening an Etsy shop with, like, she told me she does watercolor, and she showed me some of her works, which were pretty, they were cute. And just recently I saw that she ended up opening an Etsy shop. So apparently she used me to ask those questions, to ask like, is it worth it? You know, how much do you make? And like, how much effort do you put into? And she was telling me, she was giving me advice, you know, not even having done anything yet. She's like, you need to have reviews. Everybody reads reviews. And I agree with that. And I did have reviews on my website at some point, but you know, it messed up the code on my website. So I removed that app, you know, it's a Shopify kind of thing. So, okay, long story short, again, she did end up opening an Etsy shop just like last month, I think. And I mean, good luck to her. I wish her all the best. She put in a lot of work, I can tell, but I'm only like with popcorn. I'll be like watching, and because you know, I have tried for 2.5 years so hard, and it's one thing to design something and to post it, and it's a completely different thing to drive traffic to your shop and to have people buy your stuff. So best of luck to her. I'll be watching. So she's selling a thing that is very popular on Etsy, which is a digital download. Honestly, her work looked like she photoshopped photos with like a watercolor filter. I might be wrong, but they look like that to me. And you know, I'm not judging, I'm only observing, and I want to see how it turns out. So the second story I wanted to tell you, just very recently I got a message on Facebook from a co-worker with whom we work together in that big global company. She is like a medium level manager. We weren't close at all, like we did communicate, and once you know, she always wore like beautiful silver jewelry, and which was very unique, and she's also from Europe, from a different country. You know, we always like kind of see each other. We kind of stand out. I think we like to like dress up a little bit, if you haven't noticed. So she was like, oh, I actually make the jewelry. I'm like, why don't you sell it? She's like, I used to, but it didn't work out. You know, I got so sick. I got so tired of going to like in-person events to sell it. It was not worth it. So she got that full-time job, and she actually climbed the career ladder. She had benefits and everything. We had some like moments when we were working together. Sometimes she would like be a little bit arrogant, and she told me things like, oh, this information is for employees only, and like you're a contractor, so it's not for you. And that kind of hurt me a little bit. But you know, several years passed by, and there she goes messaging me like, how are you doing? I saw you painting plein air. Can you tell me more about it? Because I'm thinking of retiring and I'm thinking of getting back to my art. I was like, okay. It turns out I can offer something to, you know, successful people, and I'm telling you this in order to share two things. One is that it seems like being an artist looks very attractive from the outside, right? And two is that everybody struggles a little bit. Everybody is looking into different venues. You know, you might be an architect, but then you change your mind, or you have like a nicely paying job, but then you plan to retire. And actually a lot of people who do art, you know, full-time are retired. You know, when I go to the plein air outings, I see a lot of retired people. I was hoping to make it before I retire, but who knows. Another example I wanted to share is also quite recent, from my new job, which is in customer service, and which I will tell you about at the end of this video. So I met a woman there, and I don't even remember how we started talking about something. So it turns out she's like, I'm a textile designer. I'm like, me too. She's like, I did silk scarves. I'm like, me too. So I spoke to this woman, and she said, you know, I did a lot of scarves. Like, she actually hand dyed them and hand painted them and sold them at, you know, craft shows. And she said kind of the same thing, like, I got exhausted. It wasn't worth it financially. I had the greatest time of my life. I really enjoyed it, but I had to give it up because, you know, I couldn't make it. So these are real life examples. I don't know, unfortunately, personally, anybody who would say, oh, I've actually, you know, taken a class on Skillshare and I got so successful. People very often, you know, either keep quiet about how things are. You know, people don't say like, you know what, I'm actually barely selling anything. Or sometimes people exaggerate success because nobody wants to look like a failure, right? Okay, on to the next point. Point number 7 is also a little bit unsettling. The future for artists is unclear. It is a very different world now that AI has entered the game. And I don't necessarily mean it negatively. It offers new possibilities. It's a new tool. Although I'm personally not very thrilled about it because many buyers can't tell apart a real painting and an image that looks like a painting, an image that's generated, right? People are getting more educated, and sometimes I see, for example, in Facebook groups, photos of beautiful gardens or scenery, or an AI watercolor image, and some people are like, oh my goodness, it's gorgeous, it's beautiful, and someone else like, this is fake, this is not real. But truth is, many people don't care. They will buy a digital watercolor on Etsy to print out as wall art, and they could care less if it's, you know, a real life painting, or it's a photoshopped picture, or if it's AI generated, right? If it looks good, they will buy it. At the same time, there are still people out there who don't want AI. They will gladly support a real and local artist, and that's actually my advice to you, to not to shy away from in-person events like local art shows and craft fairs that I'm looking into myself now. I don't know if it is profitable, and I have just shared examples of other people, but it might be something, you know, to try out. I still really don't know what the future holds for me as an artist and designer. Of course, I have thought of getting back to an office design job, and that's why I eventually got a part-time job. I thought it through very well. I feel like going back to the same exact scenario that made me so unhappy would be like betraying myself, putting myself back into the situation that I escaped from. Of course, it's important to say that I am being picky now because thankfully at this point in my life I can be a little picky. It's not a matter of life and death to bring an income as high as possible for me. In that case, I would act differently and take the highest possible paying job, no questions asked. But for now, my main priority is quality of life. I mentioned it as well in my video about multi-creatives. Have you watched it? I'll leave links to it. So I started looking into finding a job about a year ago when I realized things are not working out as I planned, you know. I made videos about it, like spoonflower sales got down significantly. AI art, you know, kind of blew up on the market. So there was like more nails on the coffin of my little business. I'm not giving up though. And the whole idea of getting another job was a tragedy for me because I felt like if I get a job and move away from being a full-time artist, it means failure. But now I don't think so at all. Actually, it's quite the opposite. By finding an appropriate supporting job, I'm choosing to continue working on my small business. I just had to find a job that fits my very specific goals, which are: the job is unrelated to design, so I don't spend any creative juices on it and direct all of them to pattern talent. The job is part-time, so I actually have time and energy to work on pattern talent. The job is not 100% computer-based because working full-time on the computer aggravated my neck, shoulder, and arm pain to the point when I couldn't live like this anymore. And I can't, you know, pattern talent is still there. I have to do stuff on the computer. I can't have another computer job. Also, the job had to be in person because I got sick of being home all the time. I literally wasn't moving enough, even though I went to the gym about 2 times a week and I walked for an hour almost daily. It still wasn't enough movement for my body, and my chronic pains were bugging me. And I also just wanted to interact with people more, as freelancing can get very lonely and I don't have a big circle of friends or family here. The job had to be easygoing and non-stressful for the most part, at least have a nice friendly team. The job had to be fulfilling and based on my other interests, ideally also in a nice place, or have like a beautiful road that I drive or something like that, or maybe a nice place for lunch and so on. Remember in the scanner personality video, I mentioned a type that just wants to live a good life with good people, have pleasant sensations and experiences daily. That's me. The little things matter. So, I found a job that hits almost all of the points. The only thing I had to sacrifice was, can you guess what it is? The pay rate, of course. You can't have it all. The pay is very low. I was paid almost twice as much as a designer, and with the inflation and everything, the designer hourly rate is probably higher. I mean, for in-house work. But, you know, you never know. They don't really rush to raise, you know, designer rates. Is anybody working a full-time or like an in-house designer job and willing to share your hourly rate? You can comment below. We would all appreciate it. But that's literally the definition of downshifting, changing a financially rewarding but stressful career or lifestyle for a less pressured and less highly paid but more fulfilling one. So that's downshifting. That's what I did. So where do I work now? Drum roll. I work at a botanic garden as a visitor center and sales associate. As my manager said, it's a combination of a botanical garden and a museum. The larger organization is called the Native Plant Trust, and it promotes planting native northeastern plants. Unlike many popular plants that are brought to plant nurseries from all over the world, native plants are the ones that have grown here for thousands of years, and while they might be not as showy or colorful as the popular garden plants, they are better for the bees, bugs, birds, and the entire environment. And the place I work specifically at is called Garden in the Woods. Two of my favorite things in the world, besides watercolor and textile design, of course. So it's a forest/botanical garden where people come to walk the trail, and I charge them admission and sell memberships and sell things at the gift shop, tell them about the trail, and we also sell native plants at the shop, which is on another side of the same building. So it's a very dynamic job. Selling plants, I have to learn about them. They are very specific. I'm a gardener, but I didn't know much about native plants specifically. And now that people ask questions like, what should I plant in a shady spot? Or do rabbits eat this one? So I'll show you a book, you know, the native plant primer for the Northeast. And this is not an ad or anything, and I do not recommend it. Like, it's a good book, but it's just a story to tell. So I bought this book a couple years ago before I started working at that place, and I visited it once as a visitor. And it turned out now that this book was written by our head of horticulture, and he comes by, you know, almost daily, and I see him and I'm still like a little starstruck because he wrote the book. And they are sold at the gift shop. Usually he signs them here. And all the photos were taken also, you know, where I work. Let me find some maybe familiar pictures to show you. I was hoping to find like a picture of visitor center or something like that. But so it's areas like this. It's a botanic garden. And I'm a big botanic garden enthusiast. Wherever I travel, I drag my family to a botanical garden nearby. I love that. So that was my goal, to find a job that, you know, genuinely interests me and feeds my other needs and interests. And like I promised in the beginning, how can this job be useful for my design and art career? Well, first of all, since I'm genuinely passionate about plants and nature, it nurtures me and feeds my other interests, making me more complete, happier, more well-rounded and educated. I'm happy to be contributing to the great cause of nature preservation. I also get to deal with people a lot, which was my fear, as I've always considered myself an introvert, but it turned out, you know, I've worked through my fear, and it turned out that very quickly that I have no problem dealing with people. I actually really enjoy it. As you know, being just with different people and being with your people is very different. Everybody who works at the shop with me, and it's about 20 of us, loves plants, gardening, or nature to some extent. And the people who come visit the trail are always the same, like-minded. They are very sweet. They will find like little bugs on them and be like, oh my goodness, let me rescue the bug and take them outside. And I do all those things as well. So it's like finding your crowd is amazing. So their eyes will light up when they see our books. They come back after walking the trail with relaxed and happy faces, and they will ask questions like, oh, what flower is blooming near the education building, and so on. And more directly related to my design job, the visitor center where I work is also a gift shop where my manager does an absolutely fabulous job finding artist goods, nature-themed merchandise, anything with plants, mushrooms, birds, and so on. It wasn't why I got this job, and while it would be great to get my stuff selling there at some point, that wasn't my goal when applying for this job. But I did want to observe the workflow, like what kind of merchandise do shop managers choose. And also the most valuable data is what are people actually buying, right? Because I'm the retail associate, I'm the one ringing up, what they're buying. And I think it's a very cool topic. Let me know if you would like a video about, what is sold in gift shops, like what sells better and so on. There is another giant plus to this job. Remember I mentioned I sort of had trouble communicating with people, and I actually had a giant fear working again in customer service, even though I did work a bunch of jobs like that before becoming a designer. So this very mild social phobia always prevented me from selling my art in person at craft fairs and artist co-op shops. So artist co-op shops is when, say, 20 artists take turns selling their merchandise in a shop as sales associates. So because all the few in-person interactions related to selling my art in person as opposed to online were negative. Like people would complain that it's too expensive, and that's another important thing you should know about being an artist, that people will very often lowball you, ask for discounts, or rather have a commission for free. That's very common, and we need to learn how to deal with it. So now, working at a store as a retail associate, I have no problem selling art goods such as mugs, postcards, and greeting cards, and so on. I kind of broke this wall, in my mind, and I realized people don't really judge art the way artists themselves do, on the level of professionalism and so on. They buy art as a gift for somebody, and when it has some personal connection to them. For example, they love butterflies, so they will buy a box of cards with butterflies. The price also, of course, plays an important role, but not the main role. Again, if you want me to make a separate video about it, I think it's a very cool topic. More art retail revelations, drop a comment. So now I'm considering participating in maybe a Christmas art show or craft fairs, which are very common here. Do you participate in those, or do you visit them? Are they popular in your area? Are they expensive? Because here they usually kind of are. How do you feel about them? How do you feel about buying things in gift shops of museums and botanical gardens? Do you like going to botanical gardens? I want to know. Another big plus of this job is that I am not trying to reach career heights here. I express myself through my art and design. I'm not trying to become a manager or climb the career ladder like before, in corporate environment. I also get to walk the trail during lunch, which is, I have a very short lunch break, but still. So, if you need a job to support your art journey for now, my advice would be to find one that nurtures you and gives you value rather than money. If it pays well, it's awesome too. That's a jackpot. I've never experienced anything like this before, because previously I was always striving for prestige, for a job that you can brag about, and now it's definitely a mindset shift for me. Although when I talk to my mom, I think she's still baffled why I'm not at the cool corporate job anymore, not teaching English at least, putting my honors diploma to use. But you know what? You only have one life. You should do what feels right for you, not what society dictates. I really believe in it. I am so glad that I found a way out from the situation where I felt I wasn't succeeding as a freelance designer financially. And rather than giving up everything completely, I found a compromise. So whenever you are stuck, there's gotta be a solution. Going back to a full-time office career isn't the only option, but you might have to make some sacrifices, like with a lower pay rate. But I told myself it's going to motivate me to make more money with pattern talent, because I do have a fear that, this job would take over and I would have little energy, and that's sometimes a problem. That's true. It's very hard. Whatever two jobs you have, having two jobs is not easy, and I've been through this situation many times. Either being a mom with small children and having a part-time job, I always felt like, oh, I'm only working 30 hours a week. You know what? 30 hours is still a lot, especially with women who deal with a lot of like household stuff and children. To be completely honest, not everything is amazing at my current job. It's a physically demanding job. I've never worked in retail before, and I didn't realize you are actually standing all day. I'm not even joking. There are days when for 6 hours, which is my shift, I don't sit down at all. Are there any retail workers here? Comment below what are your most and least favorite things about working in retail. We also don't really have air conditioning. It's a very old building where I work, so it's very hard on, you know, hot days. I had to adjust my wardrobe significantly because, you know, sometimes you are inside the visitor center greeting the visitors, and sometimes you are more needed outside, so you have to go out and water plants and move, you know, plant pots which are dirty, and you know, you can get a little bit dirty. You know, I'm not afraid of dirt. I'm a gardener, but I've never been dirty at work before. So for me, it's a transition, of course. So it's very hard for me on days like I've just watered plants outside and I'm all sweaty and now I have to go inside and, you know, ring people in when they go to walk down, and you're like, the main trail is under a mile long. Here is a paper map for you. So, but you know what? I wanted something new. I wanted something dynamic. I wanted something I haven't done before. This is like a classic scanner personality type thing, and I'm happy. I applied 3 times for, you know, working at this particular organization. One was like a philanthropy job where you had to like sell memberships and stuff, do emails and phone calls. Another one was like a financial assistant, which I am not, obviously. And then the retail sales associate. I'm happy that I got the job. It's a very, very different, cool, new experience, you know. And it's also seasonal. So at the end of October, when the Botanic Garden closes, I get to choose like whether I find a new job for the winter, or maybe I'll just make more Skillshare classes and spend more time, you know, working on pattern talent. Because yes, like I mentioned, unfortunately, I do have less energy and time now, and I knew it, and I knew that it would be like that. But this is, you know, what grown-up life looks like. You have to give up certain things, you have to make sacrifices for your family, and yeah, and I would definitely rather do all this cool stuff outside. I get to be outside, you know. Hopefully I can't wait till I take my blood test, because you know, every year it's like, you're vitamin D deficient, you're vitamin D deficient. I'm wondering if now my vitamin D is normal, because I'm outside half of the day. I would rather do all this than be in an air-conditioned office all day with all the possible aches and pains. Even now, when I work on like a complicated design and pattern talent for, you know, 4 or 5 hours, my body is just killing me. It's just, you know, when you have chronic conditions, they will hit you, they will find you eventually. Like, they never fully go away. I'm very talkative today, right? That's what working in customer service does to you. Now actually my mid-back started hurting from standing. You know, I stand, new positions at work, new pains, chronic pains. Welcome to the club. This year I'm turning 40 years old in like a couple weeks, and my feet and legs are killing me by the end of the day. But you know what you gotta do. If you've enjoyed this video, I would appreciate your little like. It's a free and instant way of saying thank you. And don't forget to subscribe, share this video with your art buddies, and remember, artists are everywhere. They are among us. They could be working in your doctor's office, your clothing store, and so on. Show them some love. Buy from your local and non-local artists. Luckily we have the internet. And if you garden, plant botanicals native to your area if you can. Keep making artwork and following your dreams. Nobody said it was going to be easy, but giving up, you deprive yourself of a chance to succeed. Keep going. Find compromises. There is always a solution. You just have to find it. Bye. Just to give you a little bit of context, it's June 20th and it's 37 degrees Celsius outside, which is 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit. And yeah, so I'm sweating in my attire. Oh my, I want to make one more video today.